When a string of mysterious deaths shakes one of Savannah's wealthiest families, whispers of an ancestral curse sweep through the old cobbled streets. But Detective Miles Harrington of the NYPD doesn't believe in curses, only motives. Called down to Georgia for his expertise in ritual pattern homicides, Miles finds himself in a city that clings to its ghosts. The Wentworths built their fortune on charm and silence, but beneath their crumbling mansion lies a secret older than the city itself, a women's order known as the Black Veil Society, formed to protect, corrupted to punish. The Black Veil Society. A story by 10 Chapters Studio. Chapter 1, The House on Whitaker Street. The house on Whitaker Street pretended not to notice the heat. It failed. Paint lifted from shutters. Ivy clung to brick like a drunk to a bar stool. The air tasted of lemon and iron, and somewhere behind the house a cicada screamed its grievance. Detective Miles Harrington was a long way from the 10th precinct and farther from sleep. 2 flights, 1 rental, a warm badge in his pocket. Lieutenant Harlan Wade met him at the steps, red from arguing with people who never lost arguments. "Harrington," Wade said, hand-hot, "appreciate you flying down." "Your message said ritual staging, 2 victims," Miles replied. "Eleanor Wentworth, 74. Her nephew, Thomas, 38, Wade said. "Both in this house, hands folded, silk at the throat. Not tied arranged. Asphyxiation. Press says curse. I say murder." "You read the Hell's Kitchen case," Miles said. Wade grimaced. "The mannequins and rosary knots. You saw rhythm in the binding. Captain figured you see music where others see rope." The foyer exhaled money-cooled air. Portraits lined the walls, men in cravats, women embalmed in oil and lace. A maid drifted by, eyes lowered with professional piety. The Wentworth fortune had purchased silence and taught it to echo. A detective. The voice from the stairs was sharp as a sermon. Margaret Wentworth, early 40s, black dress, posture like marble. "Thank you for coming." "Ms. Wentworth," Wade said. "Detective Harrington, NYPD." "I know who he is," she said. "He stops stories from growing teeth." "Stories don't grow teeth," Miles said. "People do." "Then stop whoever keeps choking mine with silk." They led him to Eleanor's room, curated gentility preserved under glass. A silk scarf lay coiled on the bed like a patient snake, still perfumed. On the nightstand, a glass beaded with humidity, a tarnished bell, an antique magazine. The loop in the scarf wasn't tied, tightened and eased, deliberate. "Stagecraft," Miles said. "No prints," Wade answered. "Staff found her after breakfast. Thinning the day," they said. Windows locked. "And the nephew?" "Third floor study. Same setup. His mouth was full of magnolia petals." Margaret didn't blink. "Whoever did this wants us to believe we earned it." "Did you?" Miles asked. "In Savannah, guilt's a perfume," she said. "We all wear a little. We don't strangle ourselves with it." They walked the hall. The family photographs were rehearsed, every Wentworth aware of the lens. Miles crouched by the baseboard, grey grit smeared under his finger. "Plaster," he said. "Fresh. Something moved." "The house shifts in summer," Margaret replied. "Does it shift magnolia petals into dead men's mouths?" "Thomas collected symbols," she said. "He'd appreciate this one." Downstairs, the parlor windows framed a garden drowning in noon. A fountain whispered to Coy. The maid returned at Wade's nod. "This is Alma," Wade said. "She found Mrs. Wentworth." Alma's hands folded themselves. She looked peaceful. Only the scarf was wrong. Miss Eleanor wore silk for parties, not naps. "Did she believe in curses?" Miles asked. "In reputations," Alma said. "Those last longer." "And Thomas?" Wade asked. "Mr. Thomas collected causes," Alma said. "Causes collect enemies." Miles scanned the room piano draped in lace, silver bright enough to blind. Letter openers lined like polite weapons. On the mantel, a photograph of 7 veiled women, faces shadowed, hands clasped. No date, only an embossed W. Family wedding? Miles asked. Charity circle, Margaret said. Long gone. The parlor felt staged, as if the house were auditioning for tragedy. Miles pressed his palm to the window. The glass was warm, as if the building were breathing back. Detective, Margaret said softly. Will you stop this? I'll stop someone, he said. Whether your city calls it a curse or a cousin. Outside, cicadas roared like tiny engines. Wade sniffed the air. You smell that? Magnolia, Miles said. Gasoline. They turned toward the carriage house, where sweetness met something sharp and deliberate. Savannah was dressing for a fire. End of Chapter 1. Chapter 2. Whispers of the Black Veil. By morning, Savannah was soaked in stillness. A storm hovered somewhere over the river, waiting for permission to break. The air was heavy enough to bend thought, and the city moved slowly, as if afraid of what it might disturb. Detective Miles Harrington walked the narrow sidewalk toward the police station, a building that smelled of mildew, wet paper, and exhaustion. Inside, Lieutenant Wade stood before a corkboard plastered with photos. Eleanor Wentworth lying neatly composed, her nephew Thomas surrounded by magnolia petals, and a polished silver W pendant near both bodies. Miles set his coffee down. Family crest? Maybe, Wade said. He pulled an evidence bag from the desk, a small wooden box, a black ribbon draped around it like mourning cloth. Inside were sepia photographs, women, each veiled, the dates marked between the 1940s and 1970s. Beneath them lay a single note written in elegant script. We protect what men cannot be trusted to guard. Sounds like doctrine, Miles said. Not scripture? Wade asked. He shook his head. Scripture tries to forgive, doctrine remembers. Wade frowned. Think this has to do with that secret women's group the maid mentioned? The Black Veil something? Miles said nothing. He'd already done his reading, Savannah folklore turned civic myth. The Black Veil Society, founded after the Civil War, a network of women who shielded one another from ruin in a world that expected them to stay quiet. Some accounts painted them as protectors, others as executioners. He'd learned not to dismiss ghosts, at least not the kind that wore perfume and pearls. Let's bring in the daughter, he said. Margaret Wentworth. She's already on her way, Wade replied. Insisted on it. Margaret arrived shortly after noon, wrapped in grey, hair pinned high and severe. The kind of woman who could walk through fire and call it a garden party. Her eyes went straight to the board. She studied the images without flinching. I expected better lighting, she said. Miles handed her one of the photographs from the box. Recognize anyone? She traced a gloved finger along the edge of the image, but didn't touch the face beneath the veil. My grandmother, and Eleanor, before she forgot she was human. Forgot? She liked the appearance of morality, Margaret said. It bought her forgiveness when she ran out of charm. Miles met her gaze. What about the Black Veil Society? Margaret hesitated, only for a heartbeat, but he saw it. An old wives' club, charity, gossip, ambition masquerading as virtue. They called it a society to make sin sound organized. Wade cleared his throat. We got an anonymous note last night at the Savannah Tribune. Said the cleansing isn't done. No name, no return address. Margaret's expression didn't change. Then someone's trying to turn grief into theater. My family has enough history without props. Miles studied her. 2 deaths, both staged. That's not theater. That's someone writing a script and forcing you to play your part. Her eyes flicked toward the window where rain streaked the glass. Then maybe the curtain should have fallen long ago. She stood abruptly. I'll send over my mother's letters. She wrote to everyone but God. Maybe one of them wrote back. When she left, Wade leaned against the desk. She's ice. She's afraid, Miles said. Not of whoever's killing them, of whoever's telling the story. He left the station and walked through the slow drizzle toward the Wentworth Chapel at the edge of Whitaker Street. The family's private crypt sat among live oaks bent with moss, the air heavy with floral decay. The door was open. Inside knelt a woman in clerical black, murmuring over a marble tomb. She turned when she heard his footsteps. "Detective Harrington," she said. "I'm Reverend Agatha Penn." He knew the name. Eleanor Wentworth's personal chaplain. Her smile was as tight as the collar around her neck. "They buried Eleanor here?" he asked. "2 days ago. Closed coffin." Margaret insisted. "You didn't see the body?" "The Lord doesn't need proof to forgive," she said. "But detectives do." Penn's mouth curved faintly. "You're not from here, are you?" "No." "Then you'll have to learn quickly. In Savannah, sin doesn't hide in the shadows. It hosts tea at noon. Outside, thunder cracked across the sky. The scent of magnolia thickened, sweet, cloying, faintly rotten. Church bells began to toll. 1, 2, 3, 7. Miles paused at the door. One bell was ringing off-beat, a fraction late, again and again. The same number as the women in the old photograph. He listened to the rhythm. In Savannah, the dead didn't whisper. They kept time. End of Chapter 2. Chapter 3. A Portrait of Lies. The rain came as mist that turned everything electric, the kind of drizzle that sharpened sound and smeared color. By dusk, the Wentworth mansion glowed faintly behind a curtain of water, its lights pulsing like a heartbeat. Margaret had allowed Detective Miles Harrington limited access, which meant he could look anywhere she already knew he'd find nothing. He moved through the house like someone walking inside another person's memory, careful not to disturb the ghosts. The gallery stretched along the second floor, a corridor of oil and dust. Portraits stared down with old wealth's certainty. Men carved from pride, women embalmed in gentility. Beneath the varnish, Miles felt the rot of generations pretending not to smell their own secrets. He stopped before Eleanor Wentworth's portrait. The painting dated 1959, the year she'd married into power. The artist, a local eccentric, had vanished shortly afterward. Up close, Miles saw something faint in the shadows of her dress. A veil, almost invisible, painted in ghost grey, deliberate, hidden. A whisper came from the doorway. "She kept that one covered for years," said Alma, the housekeeper. She stood clutching a rag like a rosary. "Didn't like to see it. Said it made her feel watched." "Watched by whom?" Miles asked. "By who she was before," Alma murmured. "Before she married. She taught at St. Miriam's for girls. They said she showed the older girls how to protect themselves." "Protect?" Miles turned toward her. Alma hesitated. "Safe can mean a lot of things, Detective." Before he could press further, Margaret appeared in the hall, framed by lightning. "That will be all, Alma." The maid vanished, as if the storm had swallowed her. Margaret stepped beside him, gaze fixed on the portrait. "She loved that painting once," she said quietly. "Then she covered it like a sin. My mother preferred her reflection to her conscience." "You think she was part of the Black Veil Society?" Miles asked. Margaret gave a humorless laugh. Every woman of her time belonged to something. They called it a society because rebellion sounded better in French. And what was their rebellion? A circle of women tired of permission. It started with good intentions, like most disasters. Lightning flashed, throwing their shadows across the floor. "Tell me about your cousin Thomas," Miles said. She poured herself brandy from a cut-glass decanter, the liquid trembling in the glass. "He was her favorite mistake. She raised him after my uncle died. He forged antiques and excuses. Came here last month to catalogue the family pieces for insurance." She looked out the rain-streaked window. "Said he was protecting our legacy. He ended up dead instead," Miles said. "Thomas believed our stories had gravity, that curses were debts waiting to be paid. Maybe he was right." She took a sip. "My mother always said death was the only honest inheritance." "Debts for what?" "For the things this family did to stay clean," she said. "They used to call us the White Widows. Every generation a husband dies young and the women keep breathing, grieving beautifully." Miles studied her face. the same hard lines that time had carved into Eleanor's portrait. "Beautiful grief hides ugly truth," he said. A muscle in her jaw tightened. "You should put that on your tombstone, detective." The front door opened below, Wade's voice echoing up the stairs. He appeared in the hall, rain dripping from his coat, holding a file. "Autopsy's back," he said. "Thomas was sedated before he died. Chloral hydrate, old school but effective. Whoever mixed it knew their chemistry." Miles's glance flicked to Margaret. A pharmacist could do that, or a teacher. Margaret's face didn't move, but the glass in her hand did, the faintest tremor. Thunder rolled across the roof. Wade crossed to the window and pointed toward the courtyard. "You see that?" A single light had come alive in the carriage house, the same one that had smelled of gasoline the day before. Miles grabbed his coat. "Stay here." Margaret's voice followed him down the stairs. "Detective, what if it's the curse again?" He didn't answer. Rain slapped the gravel as he crossed the yard. The carriage house door creaked open, unlatched. Inside, air heavy with damp and turpentine. Paintings leaned against the walls, frames stacked like coffins. In the center stood an easel. A fresh canvas rested there. Eleanor's face again, but this time completely veiled, her features erased by shadow. Beneath the easel, wet footprints, bare, small, recent. A bolt of lightning illuminated the far wall. A silhouette flickered, a woman's shape motionless, holding a silk scarf that shimmered like water. The light blinked out. The shape was gone. Only the smell of rain and gasoline remained. End of Chapter 3. Chapter 4. The Magnolia Cemetery. Dawn left Savannah glazed in puddles that turned cobblestone to mirrors. Detective Miles Harrington was still tasting turpentine from the carriage house when Wade's call came through, voice clipped and hollow. "Magnolia Cemetery," he said. "Another one." The cemetery lay at the edge of town like a held breath oak stooping low, Spanish moss drooping in grief. The Wentworth Mausoleum sat near the center, a granite chapel with a door built to keep secrets in. Blue lights washed over stone angels. Wade met him on the path. Groundskeeper found him before sunrise, same staging. "Who?" "Henry Wentworth, Margaret's brother." Inside, the air was chilled and sour with lilies. Henry sat in a straight-backed chair facing the crypt, hands folded neatly. A silk ribbon rested around his throat. Magnolia petals were scattered at his feet, a parody of reverence. "He was moved," Miles said. "No one dies this composed." "2 sets of hands, maybe 3, Wade replied. The pathologist knelt beside the chair, sedated first. Inner elbow puncture, chloral hydrate most likely. Miles's jaw tightened, same as Thomas. On a shelf nearby, a silver frame displayed the familiar photograph 7 veiled women, the embossed W catching a cold glint. "Backward again," Wade said. "They want us trapped in history," Miles answered. He scanned the walls. Eleanor Wentworth's new plate gleamed on the crypt-fresh engraving, certainty too clean. "Closed coffin," Reverend Penn had said. The fact hung heavy. "Where's Margaret?" "In the chapel," Wade said. She identified him, didn't cry. Grief's a private talent. They crossed the lane to a small chapel washed in stained glass color. Margaret stood near the altar, motionless, hair pinned like armor. Reverend Agatha Penn hovered beside her, turning a string of wooden beads that clicked softly in the silence. "How many more?" Margaret asked the glass. "How many throats until Savannah is satisfied?" "Your brother was sedated," Miles said. "This isn't a curse, it's access." "In Savannah," she replied, "access is a religion." "Where was he last night?" "At home," she said. "We dined at 8. He left near 9 to clear his head. He wanted to sell part of the property. Said the house eats people." "Smart man," Wade muttered. Penn's voice slipped between them. "Grief makes us cruel to the living." Miles turned to her. "Where were you, Reverend?" "In prayer," she said. "Alone?" "The Lord is excellent company." Her bead stilled. Miles let it pass. "I'll need Henry's schedule," he told Margaret. "Anyone who gains if he's gone." "With old money," she said. "Everyone gains and no one does, that's the trick." A rookie hurried in, clutching a paper bag. "Found this by the gate." Wade opened it. A white silk scarf lay inside, damp and faintly medicinal, a rust-brown smear at one edge. "Blood?" Wade asked. "Could be," said the pathologist. "Could be lipstick, we'll test." Miles lifted the silk with a pen. The loop had been tied and untied practice. "Someone rehearsing devotion," he said. They stepped outside, gravel crunching. Footprints dotted the path. Heavy men's treads overlain by smaller, nearly bare impressions. Miles crouched. Narrow foot, light step young, maybe female. The same pattern from the carriage house. "Lily," Wade said. "Margaret's girl, 17. 17, Margaret said tightly. "She's at school." "We'll confirm," Miles said. Her eyes hardened. "You think my daughter—" "I think she lives in a house built on ghosts," he said. "That changes how a girl defines mercy." Wind shifted, bringing the magnolia's sweetness edged with rot. From the city, church bells began to toll. 1, 2, 3, 7. Again, one bell rang late. Miles felt the hairs on his neck lift. Reverend Penn's beads resumed their rhythm. "You're listening for the wrong music, Detective." "Maybe," he said, "but the killer isn't." They sealed the mausoleum and taped the gate. As Wade spoke to the grounds crew, Alma appeared at the far path, apron damp, breath ragged. "Miss Margaret," she called, voice cracking. "It's Lily. She didn't come home last night." Margaret swayed, hand catching the pew for balance. The photograph of the 7 veiled women flickered again in Miles's mind. 7 faces, 7 bells, 7 lessons, dressed as faith. Wade swore under his breath. "You think she's next?" Miles was already moving. "No," he said, "she's the point." End of Chapter 4. Chapter 5. The Widow's Confession. Rain returned by afternoon, sliding down the church windows in patient threads. Savannah had gone half dark, streets soft with fog. Detective Miles Harrington watched the city blur through his windshield as Wade briefed him over the radio. "Margaret's girl still missing," Wade said. "We've got patrols checking the Riverwalk and bus depot, nothing." Miles turned onto Whitaker, tires whispering on wet stone. "Someone's keeping her close," he said. "This isn't random." "You think the same person who staged the others took her?" "I think the same hand wrote every line." He parked outside a crumbling boarding house on Oglethorpe Avenue. Wade had traced one of Eleanor Wentworth's old correspondences here, letters sent monthly for decades to a widow named Vera Langley. The last letter was postmarked 3 days before Eleanor's supposed death. Inside, the boarding house smelled of rain and morphine. Wallpaper peeled in floral curls. An old woman sat near a window, thin as parchment, and wrapped in a shawl the color of dried roses. "Mrs. Langley?" Miles asked. Her voice rasped like paper. "You sound northern." "Detective Harrington, NYPD, assisting Lieutenant Wade." "A New York," she said, amused. "Your kind doesn't believe in ghosts, do you?" "Not until they leave fingerprints." She smiled faintly. "Then you'll believe in mine." He pulled a chair beside her. "You knew Eleanor Wentworth." "I still do. Death's not as final as people hope." She reached for a small silver box on the table. Inside were black and white photographs of women, each wearing a dark veil. "We called ourselves the Black Veil Society, not to worship, but to survive." "Survive what?" "Men," she said simply. "The ones who decided our fates, our money, our silence. We helped one another, paid doctors, arranged divorces, hid bruises. Over time, we learned other ways to balance the scale." "Murder?" Miles asked. Her eyes found his steady and without shame. "Justice. Savannah law was made by men like Mr. Wentworth. Our law had to be quieter. And Eleanor?" "She was our compass," Vera said. "Until she wasn't. The power made her proud. She forgot we were meant to protect, not punish. What changed? Her husband's affair. She wanted the girl ruined. The rest of us refused. She acted alone. Poison. The girl lived, but her mind didn't. After that, the society fell apart. Some buried their veils, others buried worse. Miles leaned forward. Was Thomas part of this? Thomas was a child then, but he knew enough. He found the old letters last month and came to me asking if the rumors were true. I told him to leave it alone. He said he couldn't, that someone else was already digging. Who? She hesitated, then whispered, Margaret. She wanted to destroy what her mother built. A slow chill worked its way through Miles's chest. And Eleanor, still alive when I saw her last week, Vera said. She came here the night before the papers said she died, told me she was going to end it all, the society, the curse, the house, said the last veil would fall soon. Miles sat back. You're telling me Eleanor staged her own death? She wanted her family to believe the curse was real, Vera said softly, to make them confess what she couldn't forgive. But someone turned her game against her. Who? The old woman's eyes filled with light that looked almost pitying. You're clever, detective. You'll see soon enough. The veil isn't over the dead, it's over the living. Outside, thunder cracked like splitting glass. When Miles stepped back into the street, Wade's car was already waiting. You look like you just saw a ghost, Wade said. Maybe I did. Miles handed him the photograph from Vera's box, the same 7 women, but with one detail new, a teenage girl standing behind them, unmasked, smiling. Margaret. She was there, Miles said. She inherited the society, whether she admits it or not. And if Eleanor's still alive? Wade asked. Miles looked toward the rain-blurred mansion down Whitaker Street. Then she's hunting her own family and using their faith in curses to finish the work. Wade started the engine. Then we'd better move fast. Not yet, Miles said. Let's see who the next ghost is supposed to be. End of Chapter 5. Chapter 6. Letters from the Past. Night slipped over Savannah like silk too smooth to trust. The Wentworth mansion loomed in silhouette, its windows flickering with uneven light. Detective Miles Harrington stood in the parlor, listening to the storm scrape the roof while Margaret sorted through a trunk of her mother's old papers. I thought you said you'd burned everything, Miles said. I burned the copies, she replied, voice tight. These are the originals. The trunk smelled of cedar and age. Inside were stacks of letters tied with ribbon, the ink fading to the color of dried blood. Miles put on gloves and untied the first bundle. Most of the letters were to women names he didn't recognize. A few were to Eleanor herself, signed with a small hand-drawn veil in place of a signature. Every line read like confession disguised as prayer. Listen to this, Miles said. To love a man is to offer him a weapon. To lose one is to use it. Margaret winced. She always liked her metaphors. She also liked her chemistry, he said, holding up a small vial sealed in wax, hidden between envelopes. Chloral hydrate, same as the victims. Margaret's face drained. You think she left that for me to find? I think she left it for whoever was willing to look. He sifted deeper through the papers and found a folded map of the estate. A red X marked a section behind the carriage house. Faint handwriting underneath read, The Place of Beginnings. What's there? Miles asked. An old storm cellar, she said. It's been locked for years. Let's see if it still is. They crossed the lawn under slanting rain. The ground smelled of gasoline and wet moss. The cellar door crouched behind a tangle of ivy, its padlock eaten by rust. Miles pried it open with a screwdriver from Wade's kit. A damp stairwell led underground, walls sweating in the heat. At the bottom a single lantern burned. The light revealed stacks of ledgers, bottles, and rotted lace gowns hanging from hooks. On a shelf sat 7 small urns, labelled only with dates. Margaret stopped halfway down the steps. What is this? The archive, Miles said quietly. The society kept records. He opened one ledger. The handwriting matched Eleanor's crisp, patient, deliberate. The entries listed names, causes, and debts settled. Judith L. Husband's punishment complete. Lydia M. inheritance secured. Eleanor W. balance pending. At the final page, Miles found something newer. Thomas, Henry, Margaret, Lily, balance must be restored. Margaret's breath hitched. She meant to kill us. Or someone wants you to believe she did, Miles said. Either way, the pattern's set. He turned the page. Pinned to the back was a recent photograph, Lily, standing in front of the cemetery gate. The ink on the back read, "The Last Veil." Wade was right, Miles murmured. Someone's writing this like scripture. A noise echoed from the stairwell, soft, deliberate footsteps. Miles motioned for silence. The lantern flickered as a shadow moved above. "Detective?" Wade's voice called faintly. Miles exhaled. "Down here." Wade descended, flashlight cutting through dust. "We found tire tracks near the south gate," he said. "Small vehicle, likely left last night." "Could be Lily," Miles said. "Or whoever took her," Wade countered. His light swept the cellar and stopped on the urns. "Christ, she was building her own church." "Or her own graveyard," Miles said. 7 urns, 7 members. Wade picked up the map. "You think Eleanor planned all this?" "Either she planned it," Miles said, "or someone's finishing what she couldn't." A crack of thunder shook dust from the rafters. Margaret stared at the photograph in Miles's hand. "She's alive," she whispered. "My mother's alive." Miles looked at her, really looked. Beneath the composure was terror and something else, something close to relief. He handed her the photograph. "Then she's watching you, and if she's staging her return, she won't stop with ghosts." Lightning lit the cellar door. For a moment Miles thought he saw a figure at the top of the stairs, female, still, haloed in rainlight. Then the door slammed shut. The lantern went out. Darkness took the room, swallowing Margaret's gasp and Wade's curse. Miles's voice came low and steady. "Don't move. She's not done yet." End of Chapter 6. Chapter 7. The Masked Gathering. Savannah's storm had passed, but the air still trembled as if the thunder hadn't finished speaking. Detective Miles Harrington stood on the Wentworth porch at dusk, watching fireflies gather above the wet grass like brief, defiant stars. Inside, Margaret was on the phone with her daughter's school again, another call unanswered. Lieutenant Wade joined him, lighting a cigarette despite the humidity. "Uniforms checked the South Road," he said. "Found fresh tire ruts and a half-burned note. Looked like it was written on parchment." "What did it say?" "The veil will lift when the faithful gather." Miles's jaw tightened. "Sounds like an invitation." They had only one lead. In Eleanor Wentworth's old address book, several entries had been circled in red. 6 names, all women, most elderly. All of them had lived within the same 10 blocks near Forsyth Park. Miles and Wade spent the next hours visiting them. 3 doors went unanswered. 2 residents had died years ago. The last address led them to a weathered townhouse with shuttered windows and a smell of lavender trying to hide mildew. The name on the mailbox was M. Calder, one of the circled entries. Inside, candlelight spilled through cracks in a curtain. Voices murmured 6, maybe 7. Miles drew his gun, exchanged a glance with Wade, and pushed open the door. The room froze. 7 women sat around a table covered in velvet and glass. Their faces were veiled. Between them stood a single flickering candle and a silver bowl filled with magnolia petals. "Evening," Miles said softly. "If this is Bible study, you've taken a creative turn." No one moved. Then one woman older with a spine like a ruler spoke. "You don't belong here, Detective." "I'm starting to notice that everywhere I go," he said. "Which one of you sent the invitation?" They didn't answer. The woman at the head of the table finally lifted her veil. Her skin was paper-thin, eyes the color of ash. "We are what's left of the Black Veil Society," she said. "We meet once a year to remember the ones we couldn't save." Miles lowered his weapon. "Save them from what?" "From Eleanor," she said. "She lost herself in the cleansing. She believed sin was hereditary." "And now she's killing her family to erase that sin," Miles said. A murmur rippled through the group. The older woman shook her head. "You don't understand. Eleanor's dead. She died the night she came to us with her plan. We buried her with our own hands." Wade frowned. "Then who's staging these murders?" Before she could answer, the candle guttered. The door behind them slammed shut. Every woman in the room gasped. When the flame steadied again, the woman who had spoken was slumped forward, her veil smoking where the candle had tipped. Miles yanked her back. Her throat was slick with a shallow cut, a whisper of a wound. "Everyone stay still," he barked. Wade swept the room with his light. The other veiled women shrank against the walls. No one moved toward the door. Miles turned the dead woman's hand over. A scrap of fabric was clenched in her fist-white silk, frayed at the edge, still damp. "The killer's here," Wade muttered. "Or was," Miles said. "They wanted to send a message." He looked at the table again. Someone had written words in the melted wax of the candle. "Balance remains." Miles's gaze swept the women. "You all knew Eleanor. Who would have reason to finish her work?" The youngest of them, barely 60, spoke in a tremor. "She had a disciple, a girl who listened more than she should have. Eleanor called her the heir." Miles's blood chilled. "A girl." "She was 16, the woman whispered. "A Wentworth." "Lily," Wade said. The name hung in the air like smoke. "She disappeared that summer," the woman continued. "Eleanor swore she'd gone north, but I saw her once, years later, at a funeral, watching from the street." "Where?" Miles asked. "Magnolia Cemetery." Miles looked at Wade. "Call for backup. I want that place locked down." The lieutenant hesitated. "You think she's the killer?" "I think she learned from the best," Miles said. "And if she's still finishing Eleanor's work, we're already behind." He took the scrap of silk from the dead woman's hand, folding it into his pocket. The magnolia petals in the bowl had begun to brown at the edges. The candle hissed and went out, leaving only the smell of smoke and perfume. As Miles stepped outside, thunder rolled again over the city, low and deliberate like applause. End of Chapter 7. Chapter 8. The Girl in White. The city was asleep, but Savannah's air still quivered with aftershock. Detective Miles Harrington stood beside his unmarked car on Whitaker Street, collar turned up against the drizzle, scanning the dark shape of the Wentworth mansion. Somewhere out there, he knew, a girl was moving unseen, the final name in a ledger written in blood. Lieutenant Wade's call came through the radio. "We've got something at the old railway yard off River Street. Security guard found a lantern burning in one of the sheds, inside magnolia petals, fresh ones." Miles felt the rain slip cold down his neck. "Don't touch anything," he said. "I'm on my way." The yard was a graveyard of metal and ghosts. Rusted tracks cut through weeds, and abandoned rail cars squatted under the fog. Wade met him by a corrugated shed, flashlight trembling slightly. "See for yourself," he said. Inside, the floor was carpeted with petals, white and bruised at the edges. At the center stood a chair, wooden, simple, familiar. A white dress was draped over it like skin shed in haste. "Blood on the hem," Wade said quietly. "Small prints around it, barefoot." Miles crouched. The footprints were the same as those from the carriage house narrow, young, deliberate. "She's still playing the part her grandmother wrote for her," he murmured. "You think Lily's the killer?" Wade asked. Miles rose, gaze on the lantern's flicker. "I think she's the last student of the Black Veil." Wade frowned. "Then who's the teacher?" Miles didn't answer. His eyes had caught something else, faint writing on the inside of the shed wall, painted in ash. "The veil lifts tonight." A gust of wind killed the lantern. The room plunged into dark, and for a heartbeat, Miles thought he saw her, the girl in white, standing in the doorway. Small, drenched, eyes wide and calm. Then the lightning flashed, and she was gone. By dawn the rain had stopped, leaving Savannah filmed in pale mist. Miles returned to the Wentworth house. Margaret waited in the parlour, pale as her dress, a brandy untouched beside her. "She's alive," Miles said. Margaret didn't flinch. "I know. She called me." "When?" "Just before sunrise. She said she was sorry." "Sorry for what?" "For finishing what I couldn't." Miles stepped closer. "Where is she?" Margaret's hand trembled as she reached for a folded letter on the table. "She left this." The handwriting was precise, elegant, the same as Eleanor's in the ledgers. "Mother taught me to hide the truth in beauty. You taught me to hide myself. The city remembers what you forget. Tonight, I'll free us all." "She's going to Magnolia Cemetery," Miles said, "where it started." Margaret looked up, tears cutting through her composure. "She believes she's saving me." "Then she'll need a witness," Miles said, heading for the door. The cemetery was a grey maze of stone and breath. Miles and Wade moved through it quietly, their flashlights slicing the fog. The Wentworth mausoleum loomed ahead, its iron gate swinging in the wind. Inside, a single candle burned beside the chair where Henry had been found. Lily stood before it, dressed in white, veil hanging loosely over her shoulders. Her hands were empty, but her expression was carved from calm. "Lily," Miles said softly, "you don't have to do this." "She's here," Lily whispered. "Grandmother. I can feel her. She says it has to end where it began." Wade's hand hovered near his gun, but Miles raised a warning glance. "Your grandmother used people's faith to hide her guilt. Don't make her mistakes yours." Lily's eyes glistened. "You think I killed them. I think you buried them the way she taught you neatly." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I only wanted them to tell the truth." "About what?" "About what they did to me," she said. Her voice cracked like a window in cold air. "They said I was chosen. They said I'd carry the balance, but all I carried was shame." The candle sputtered. Outside, thunder grumbled again, faint and low. Miles took a step forward. "It's over." Lily looked up, eyes distant. "Not yet." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a matchbook, the same kind found in the carriage house. She struck one flame and held it to the veil. Fire caught soft and fast. "Lily!" Miles lunged, smothering the flame with his coat. She fell against him, sobbing, the smoke curling between them. "She said it had to burn," Lily whispered. Miles held her tighter. "She's wrong. The dead don't get the last word." Outside, the bells began again, 1, 2, 3, 7. This time they rang in perfect time. End of Chapter 8. Chapter 9. The Fire at Whitaker Street. Savannah burned quietly. The kind of fire that didn't roar, just whispered while it ate. Detective Miles Harrington saw the smoke before he heard the siren's thin grey ribbons unspooling above the oaks as dawn broke over Whitaker Street. By the time he reached the Wentworth mansion, half the police force was there. Fire crews moved like shadows through the thick haze. Margaret stood on the lawn barefoot, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the windows as if expecting someone to wave back. "She's inside," she said flatly when Miles reached her. Lily went back in. Wade appeared behind him, soot already on his collar. "Basement's clear," he said. "They think it started near the study. Gasoline. Deliberate." Miles's stomach turned. "Then she's following her grandmother's map to the end." He tore free of Wade's grip and pushed through the smoke-filled doorway. The foyer was a living ghost portraits, blistered by heat, chandeliers dripping wax like blood. Somewhere deep in the house, a voice called out, "Lily!" He followed it down the hall through waves of thick, acrid smoke. The parlour was already blackening, the grand piano half collapsed under its own weight. Near the base of the stairs, he saw her white dress smudged with ash, eyes glassy in the heat. She held Eleanor's portrait, the veiled one, clutched to her chest. "Put it down," Miles shouted. "She wanted it to end clean," Lily said softly. "To burn the rot out." For you'll die trying. She said the house must fall before we can be free. Miles stepped forward carefully, lungs burning. Lily, your grandmother is dead. You're the only one left to stop this. She's not dead, Lily whispered. She's been here all along. A sound came from the upper landing, a slow, uneven creak. Miles glanced up. Through the smoke, a figure moved. Female, tall, hair streaked silver, face half hidden by soot. Eleanor, Lily breathed. Miles froze. The resemblance was uncanny, but logic punched through the fog. Margaret, he said sharply. The woman stepped into view, coughing. Her voice wavered between fury and heartbreak. I tried to save her. I tried to end this. The firelight painted her face in feverish gold. She wasn't a ghost. She was Margaret, wild-eyed and shaking. Mom? Lily whispered. Margaret descended 2 steps, the old portrait blazing behind her like judgment. You were never meant to be part of this. She chose me, not you. But I couldn't carry it anymore. Miles realized the truth in a breath that burned his throat. Margaret had lit the fire, not her daughter. You killed them, Miles said quietly. You staged it all. Margaret met his eyes. I balanced the scales. Mother made me part of her circle before I was old enough to understand. She used us, me, Thomas, Henry. She said only women could bear the burden of purity. So you murdered them to prove her wrong. I murdered them to make it stop. The ceiling cracked above them. Embers fell like dying stars. Lily dropped the portrait and ran toward her mother. Stop it, please. Margaret caught her by the shoulders. You'll never understand. The curse had to be completed. Miles lunged forward and pulled Lily back just as a beam gave way. Flames climbed the staircase, hungry and precise. Margaret didn't move. She's waiting for me, she said softly, in the place of beginnings. Maggie, Wade's shout echoed through the smoke. He appeared in the doorway, coughing hard. We've got to move. Margaret smiled once small, almost relieved. Then she turned and vanished into the red bloom of fire. The heat hit like a wall. Miles dragged Lily out onto the lawn as the mansion groaned and folded in on itself, sparks flying into the pink morning sky. When it was over, the house was a skeleton of ash and memory. Margaret was gone. Wade stood beside him, eyes red from smoke. You think she planned it? Miles watched the flames eat through the last of the roof. She planned everything. Lily knelt in the grass, shaking, staring at the portrait frame she'd somehow kept in her hands. The glass had melted, but the image beneath had survived, Eleanor, unmasked, face serene. She's free now, Lily whispered. Miles looked toward the ruin. Maybe, but freedom built on lies doesn't last. From somewhere deep in the wreckage, a bell rang, once clear and cold. Then silence. End of Chapter 9. Chapter 10, The Last Veil. By dawn the rain had returned, soft, thin, cleansing. The Wentworth mansion was nothing but a smouldering skeleton. Ash drifted across Whitaker Street, clinging to the magnolia trees like grey snow. Detective Miles Harrington stood by the caution tape, coat soaked through, eyes fixed on the ruin. Behind him, emergency crews were packing up, their radios spitting static into the humid morning. Wade joined him, coffee in hand, both men too tired to drink it. They pulled her out an hour ago, Wade said quietly. Margaret, no pulse. Miles nodded once. And the girl? Stable. Shock, smoke inhalation. She's at Memorial Hospital under guard. Good, Miles said. She's the only one who can still tell the story right. They walked together toward the wreckage. The fire had peeled the house open, exposing what lay beneath, bricks blackened, beams bent into crosses, a life's worth of secrets burned into dust. Near what had been the parlor, a small metal box glinted in the soot. Miles crouched and picked it up with gloved hands. Inside were 2 objects, a folded letter and a piece of white silk, unburned. The letter was addressed simply to Detective Harrington. He read it slowly. You were right. The curse was never in the house, it was in us. I could not let it pass to her. If fire is the only thing that purifies, then let it take me too. Tell Lily the balance is hers now, but she must choose not to carry it. M.W. Miles folded the note carefully and looked at the silk. It smelled faintly of magnolia and smoke, a ghost of beauty pretending to be mercy. "Margaret wrote to you?" Wade asked. "She wanted me to understand," Miles said. "She thought dying made it cleaner." Wade exhaled. "You think she was right?" Miles looked at the ruins. "No one burns themselves innocent." They left the site in silence. That afternoon, the hospital corridors hummed with fluorescent calm. Lily sat in her room wrapped in a blanket, eyes glassy, staring out at the rain-soaked parking lot. When Miles entered, she didn't look up. "I heard they found her," she said softly. He nodded. "She wanted you to stop the curse. Instead, she became it." "She thought she was saving me." "She thought she could rewrite the past with fire," Miles said, "but the past always leaves fingerprints." Lily's gaze drifted to the bedside table, where a nurse had placed a small bundle of her mother's belongings, a locket, a singed ribbon, and the silver W pendant. She touched it lightly. "What happens now?" "You live," he said. "That's what none of them learned how to do." Tears welled, but her voice was steady. "Do you believe in curses, Detective?" Miles thought of the 7 women in veils, of Margaret's trembling signature, of the fire's patient hunger. "I believe in inheritance," he said. "Some of us inherit money, others inherit damage. The trick is knowing which to spend." Lily gave a small nod, more weary than young. "I'll try." He left her sitting by the window as rain thickened against the glass. Outside, the sky had cleared to a dull silver. Miles lit a cigarette he didn't intend to finish and watched smoke twist into the damp air. Savannah was waking up again, vendors shouting by the market, church bells counting the hour. 7, as always. But this time the rhythm was right. Wade pulled up beside him, window half lowered. "Headed back north?" "Soon," Miles said, "once the paperwork's done." "You ever get used to this?" Wade asked. Miles gave a faint smile. "The fire or the ghosts?" "Either." "No," he said, "but you learn to tell the difference." He dropped the cigarette, watched the ember fade into rainwater, and turned toward his car. In the back seat sat the small metal box from the ruins, the one holding Margaret's letter and the last piece of silk. As he started the engine, he thought he heard a faint sound from the church down the street, a single bell, soft, final. He didn't look back. The city swallowed the noise, and Savannah at last fell quiet. End of story and end of chapter. Thank you for listening and supporting our channel. Don't miss the next case. Subscribe now to stay up to date with the Miles Harrington mysteries.